They told him the sky was no longer his to claim, until a single phone call turned a forgotten warrior into a legend one more time. Marcus Reeves stood at the edge of the airfield, hands buried deep in the pockets of a jacket to sizes too large, watching the Apache helicopters cut through the morning haze like metal hawks returning home. His breath fogged in the cold Virginia air, and for a moment, just a flicker, he was 23 again, strapped into the cockpit, the world spinning beneath him in a blur of adrenaline and purpose. But that was another life, another man. The Marcus standing here now had gray streaking through his beard, a limp that never quite healed, and a cardboard sign that read homeless veteran. Anything helps tucked under his arm like a shameful secret. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. He hadn't meant to come here. The airfield was miles from the overpass where he usually slept. But something pulled him back. Maybe it was the anniversary, 15 years since his last mission. Maybe it was the dream he kept having, the one where he was still flying, still needed. Or maybe it was just the cruel joke his mind played when it had nothing left to lose. Either way, here he stood, a ghost haunting the place that once made him whole. "You lost, buddy." The voice came from behind him, sharp, official, laced with suspicion. Marcus turned slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. A young security officer, no older than 25, stood with his hand resting on his radio. The kid's eyes swept over Marcus's worn boots, the stained jacket, the hollow look of someone who'd been invisible for too long. "Just looking," Marcus said quietly, his voice like gravel scraped across concrete. "This is a restricted area. I'm going to need you to move along." Marcus nodded. Because what else could he do? He'd learned long ago that people didn't see the man anymore. They saw the circumstance, the failure, the inconvenience. He turned to leave, his bad leg dragging slightly, when the officer's radio crackled to life. "All personnel to the flight line. Admiral Hawthorne has arrived for the ceremony." The name hit Marcus like a fist to the chest. Hawthorne, Admiral Richard Hawthorne, the man who'd pinned the Distinguished Flying Cross on Marcus's chest after he'd flown through enemy fire to extract a downed crew in Kandahar. The man who'd called him one of the best damn pilots he'd ever seen. Marcus hadn't heard that name in years. Wait. The word left his mouth before he could stop it. The officer turned back, impatient. "What? Admiral Hawthorne? Is he here for the Apache demonstration?" "Yeah, retirement ceremony." "Why?" Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a battered wallet, hands trembling as he unfolded it. Inside, yellowed and creased, was his military ID from 15 years ago. Captain Marcus Reeves, 101st Airborne Division, Apache pilot. The officer's expression shifted, not to belief, but to something closer to pity. "Look, man, I don't know what you're trying to do here. I just want to see him. 5 minutes, that's all. I can't let you, please." The word hung in the air between them, fragile and desperate. The officer looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and for the first time, maybe he saw past the dirt and the desperation. He saw something that might have once been pride. "Stay here," the officer said finally, and walked toward the command building. Marcus waited, his pulse roaring in his ears. Around him, the airfield buzzed with activity. Pilots in crisp flight suits laughed and talked in clusters. Families gathered. Near the hangar, children perched on fathers' shoulders, pointing at the helicopters. Marcus felt the weight of how far he'd fallen pressing down on his chest like a boulder. What was he thinking? That the Admiral would remember him? That anyone would care about the broken man he'd become? He was about to leave when he heard it. Footsteps, multiple pairs, moving with purpose. Marcus turned, and his breath caught. Admiral Richard Hawthorne walked across the tarmac, flanked by 2 junior officers, his uniform pristine, his silver hair catching the sunlight. But it was his eyes that stopped Marcus cold. They were fixed on him with an intensity that felt like being seen for the first time in years. The Admiral stopped 3 feet away. The silence stretched, taut and unbearable. Then, slowly, Hawthorne's face broke into something Marcus couldn't quite name. Not quite a smile. Something deeper. Something that looked like grief and joy colliding. Marcus Reeves, Hawthorne said quietly. I've been looking for you for 3 years. The words didn't make sense. Marcus's mind scrambled to understand, to process, but nothing connected. Sir, you disappeared after your medical discharge. No forwarding address, no contact information. We tried everything. Hawthorne stepped closer, his voice dropping. Do you know what today is, Captain? Marcus shook his head, afraid to speak. Today, we're dedicating a new training program for wounded veterans transitioning out of service. We're calling it the Reeves Initiative. Hawthorne's eyes glistened. Named after a pilot who saved 17 lives in one mission and never asked for anything in return. Named after you. The world tilted. Marcus felt his knees weaken, felt something inside him crack open like a dam breaking. I don't understand. You saved my nephew that day in Kandahar. Did you know that? Lieutenant Davis. He was in that downed bird you pulled out. Hawthorne's voice roughened. He's a major now, has 2 kids, and he's here today because of you. Tears burned Marcus's eyes. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Hawthorne placed a hand on his shoulder, firm, steady, real. I have a proposal for you. We need an instructor. Someone who knows what it means to fly, to lead, to fall, and to keep fighting. Someone who can teach these kids that failure isn't the end. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. I need you to fly again, Marcus. Not just today, every day. Will you do that? Marcus looked past the Admiral to the Apache sitting on the flight line, its rotors still, waiting. He thought about the years of sleeping under bridges, the shame, the crushing loneliness. He thought about the sky and what it felt like to be free. I haven't flown in 15 years, Marcus whispered. Hawthorne smiled, a real smile this time. Then it's time to remember. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat in the cockpit of an Apache, his hands gripping the controls like coming home. The pre-flight checks came back to him in a flood of muscle memory. Each switch engaged exactly where it had always been. Through the windscreen, he could see a crowd gathering, pilots, families, and in the front row, Admiral Hawthorne, standing at attention. The rotors began to spin. The familiar vibration moved through Marcus's body, waking something he thought had died. The helicopter lifted, smooth and steady, rising into the Virginia sky. And as the ground fell away beneath him, Marcus Reeves felt the pieces of himself coming back together. Not the same man who'd flown before. Someone different. Someone who'd been broken and found a way to be whole again. He flew for 20 minutes, executing maneuvers with a precision that shocked even him. When he landed, the crowd erupted. But Marcus barely heard it. He was too busy crying, too busy breathing, too busy being alive. Admiral Hawthorne met him as he climbed out of the cockpit. Welcome back, Captain. Marcus saluted, the first time in 15 years, and the Admiral returned it with a respect that felt like redemption. Because the sky doesn't forget its own, and neither do the people who know what it means to fall and rise again. Sometimes the world stops seeing you, but that doesn't mean you stop being worth seeing. If this story moved you, drop a comment below and tell me what brought you here today. And if you believe that second chances can find us even in the darkest places, hit that subscribe button, because every week I bring you stories that remind us what it means to be human. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.